Life Audio.
After 3 days, I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
Everybody else is kind of like starting to get beat up, but I'm like, I'm not hungover anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm getting more energy, and there was no temptation to drink at all. There was an opportunity. It was off my mind. It was totally removed. I hadn't experienced that in years. And I was so convicted I was never going to drink again. And I was just like crushing it. And I had no intention of coming home and within minutes driving to the liquor store when I was alone, but I did.
Within minutes.
Within minutes.
Hello, and welcome to the Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic podcast. I am your host, John Seidel. This is your home for real stories, radical vulnerability, and remarkable comebacks. In the end, this podcast is a place for the desperate, the downtrodden, the destitute, and especially the drunk. But it's also a place of hope and healing. I know that firsthand because I'm the Christian who became an alcoholic, not the other way around. Today, I've found sobriety after decades of struggling. But more importantly than finding sobriety, I found Jesus. My prayer is that as I interview people just like you and just like me, along with professionals in the fields of trauma, faith, and addiction recovery, you will find the peace that is available to you through Christ on the other side of whatever you're going through and whatever addiction that might be. Because, let's face it, we're all addicted to something. So, welcome. Let's get radically vulnerable as we explore what it looks like to be on this journey of messy sanctification. So I heard something recently, someone say something that I thought was really good. And he said, even though all our stories are unique, when it comes to especially addiction, there are so many contours that are the same. And I was thinking about that as I was getting ready for today's interview, because as I read Sherry Hoppen's story, I was just blown away about how many contours were the same. That even though there are differences, that so much of our story overlaps or looks or sounds the same. Especially the deception, which is one of the hardest things I've had to live and deal with in the wake of getting sober, is the deception that I engaged in with my wife and family, and just what that did to her and to them, and how I'm still picking up the pieces from that. Listen, there is grace, but yet there are still consequences. And I don't say that to scare you if you're listening to this. Because what I can say is that even amidst the consequences, the joy and peace that I have found since aiming for Jesus and getting sobriety thrown in has been incredible. So today we're going to talk to Sherry. Sherry's going to tell us her story and the depths that it got to when she was hiding and lying. And I think what is also important about Sherry's story is that, maybe for some of you that are listening, you think, if I can just do that one incredible thing, that will break the cycle, that will break me away from the addiction. Let me do this one big, beautiful, incredible experience. I'm going to go to Machu Picchu and hike, and I know I have to get sober for that, and then I'm going to come back and everything's going to be great. And I think what you're going to realize is that Sherry had that, right? She decided, I'm going to pedal my way from Michigan to Texas over 12 days. And that is going to be what finally gets me sober. It got her sober until she came back that same day and went to the liquor store and got wasted. And that happened time and time and time again. And so she's going to detail how she became the Christian alcoholic as well. A Christian, someone who loved Jesus and followed Jesus. Hadn't really fully surrendered all of the parts of herself to Jesus, which is my story as well. and yet slowly became an alcoholic. And it wasn't something, I mean, she didn't grow up drinking. She wasn't, drinking from the age of 6 and, no. She had an event in life that threw her for a loop and slowly realized, hey, if I just start drinking and drinking earlier and earlier, it just helps kind of numb some of this stuff. This background noise goes down. So Sherry's going to detail her story. She is she's become an incredible friend, and she runs a program called Selah House, which is a women's recovery house. They do a 30-day inpatient program there in West Michigan on the shores of Lake Michigan. And I'm excited for you to hear her story. She's written a book called Sober Cycle, and goes into a lot more detail in the book, but she's going to get into, though, still some great details. So we're going to talk to Sherry here. But first of all, if you want to watch this episode with Sherry, you can go to theveritasdaily.com. You can sign up to be a subscriber for, I think it's $7 a month or $60 a year to help support what I do. And then one of the benefits is that you get to watch these podcasts ad-free, every single one of them. So you can go to theveritasdaily.com. You can also go to christianalcoholic.com as well if you'd like to pick up my book, Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic. So without further ado, Sherry Hoppen. Sherry, thank you so much for joining the Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic podcast. I look forward to all of my guests. I don't want to take away from anyone, but I've been really looking forward to this one. We've gotten to know each other and just instantly connected. And I had a chance to listen to your book over the weekend. And oh my goodness, I am so excited for this conversation. So thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me, John. And I'm looking forward to it too. We've had so many great conversations already, and we share a lot of the same history. I guess that's a mild way to put it.
Yeah.
And I knew this was going to be a great time together. And so I love what you're doing and sharing with your audience. So yeah, let's do it.
So real quickly before we start, I did an introduction before this, but just give kind of people a little bit of who you are and what you do there in Michigan.
Well, today, I always say, first of all, I'm a daughter of the King, and I have been married to my high school sweetheart for 41 years, which makes me sound really old, but I was really young when I got married.
You were like 12. You were a child.
Yes,
bride.
Exactly. And he wasn't even in high school anymore, so I don't know if you can say high school sweetheart. So, and that was trouble in the first place because I wasn't supposed to date anybody out of high school. So therein lies another story. But anyway, we have 3 adult married children and 3 their spouses we adore, and 5 grandchildren who are the focus of our lives. We just adore them. I'm so happy to be a sober grandma. That is one of my greatest joys in life. And with my daughter-in-law, I run Selah House Recovery here in West Michigan, and that is a faith-based 30-day inpatient rehab program for women that's been open about a year. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about how that evolved, and that's pretty much me doing life. And I enjoy reading, biking, anything to do with a West Michigan beach, a couple months out of the year, and all things in the winter to get away from Michigan.
Yes.
But
having grown up on literally like almost exactly the opposite side of Lake Michigan, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You get it. So it can be a long winter. So yeah.
You said biking, so your book is Sober Cycle. If you're watching this podcast at theveritasdaily.com, I'm holding it up. And I'm curious. My one question to start off is, do you still bike a lot? Because the book centers around, basically a handful of bike trips that you took across the country. Do you still bike a lot?
I would say there's a caveat there. So I love to bike. Do I bike as intensely as what I talk about in the book? No, I bike for pure enjoyment. And I don't rack up the miles like I used to, especially the last couple of years with getting Sail House off the ground. Took over life in a way I never expected. It's all good. But sometimes it involves me riding my bike 2.5 miles to Sail House and back. And I'm like, well, that was 5 miles. I didn't count on today, but that's all I'm going to get.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Michigan is full of wonderful trails. I don't like to ride bike on the road as much anymore. Road biking has become, to me, kind of dangerous.
Yep.
There's a lot of accidents, but trail riding has become very primary as far as development and things like that in Michigan. So I'm happy about that. So we do make it kind of a focus when we travel or go somewhere that we try and find new trails. So that's one of the things that we do together.
Do you still have the infamous blue bike from the book?
I do. In fact, one of the women that went through the Sail House program said, we converted the garage there into a gym. And she's like, Sherry, you need to hang that on the wall up there.
Yeah.
And I said, I would gladly do that because I don't want to ride that bike anymore. So I honestly do not enjoy riding the road bike anymore. I have like a hybrid bike that I totally enjoy, and I'll ride with my grandson now and, things like that. So it's totally different. But there was talk about, resurrecting a reunion ride or something like that. And even then, I don't know. But I will never, ever part with the blue bike. I can tell you that.
It's good. Well, so if you're listening to this and you don't know what we're talking about, so in Sober Cycle, and I'll set it up like this, and then I want you to get to your story. But in Sober Cycle, you talk about, it kind of opens with you're secretly battling addiction, alcoholism, and you kind of get this prompting to go on this ride across the country. Well, from Michigan down to, where was the first one? The first
Galveston.
Galveston, right?
Yeah, Texas.
Because the second one was Grapevine, which is like my neck of the woods now.
Oh no, I'm sorry. The first one was Grapevine. The second one was Orlando.
Okay,
Texas.
There you go. So,
Yep.
So you get this prompting, and you're encouraged to do this, and you kind of wrestle. And I think in a perfect world, people are like, okay, sober cycle. So you go on this trip. It's 12 days, and you realize you're an alcoholic, and you come back, and everything is perfect, and like life is neck, and now you're not an alcoholic, and that is not it at all. And that's part of the reason I love this story, is because not only did you not stay sober after the first ride, you didn't stay sober after the second ride. You didn't stay sober. Like, you kept coming back to the alcohol, and each time you just bury it deeper and deeper, and more lies and more lies and more lies. And I think it's something that I can relate to, and I know it's something that people listening can relate to. So tell us the story of your slide into alcoholism, how it took over your life, and then how you finally broke free.
Yeah, I would, as you're describing that, I'm like, well, that is the perfect description of stubborn surrender. So, because I tried everything but what I needed to do. And I really thought that giving into this or doing this bike ride, this fundraiser bike ride, was going to be the thing that saved me. And definitely it wasn't. And they say God works in mysterious ways. And there was a lot of things around that I look back in hindsight that were all things that were part of the equation that got me on my knees in total surrender. But it took a while. So, way back, looking back, alcohol was not a problem for me growing up. I had a good childhood. I grew up in a small town. I rode my bike everywhere as a kid because that's what you did. And I mean, you could disappear for a whole day, and your parents were like, "Oh, she's back," Yeah.
Back
and
when the street lights turn on.
Exactly. And I was that kid that rode my bike to the library every Saturday, loaded up my backpack with books, and was done with all of them by Monday and started to reread them. I was kind of a book nerd. And I loved reading. I loved reading, but I loved being outdoors too. So I had a good childhood. My world was rocked quite a bit when I was 14 years old, and my parents started talking about divorce. And by the time I was 16, they were divorced. And that was hard. I didn't know how bad things were. And you don't have a comparison as a kid. I did know I was more comfortable at other people's houses. I wasn't big on bringing the neighbor kids back to my house. I went to their house and never
same.
really had a why in my head for that. And in doing that, my youngest daughter said something to me after she read the book that makes so much sense to me now. And she said, Mom, what every kid doesn't realize, and most of them don't get to read a book about it, but there is a backstory in our parents' lives that most of us never have exposure to. And I thought that was so interesting because, there is a backstory going on that as a kid you're kind of oblivious to until you're not. And that's when the hard stuff is. And around that time when I was about 15, I met my husband, Craig, in the total redneck way possible at the Hudsonville Fair. And yes, I know. And
showing pigs?
No, he was it gets better. He was my brother's 4-H leader. And I know you love that part. I know. My brother was like, "Hey, you should meet him." And I'm like, my 12-year-old brother is not setting me up. Okay, that's like a whole new level. And I thought he was too short, to tell you the truth. And
hey, nothing against short kings right here, baby.
Well, turns out he had at least 2 inches on me, so there's that. But, to say I knew he was, there was something right then and there. And I was 15 and he was 18, fresh out of high school. So I did have to lie that whole first year we dated that he was in high school. So that did create a bit of a problem when there was no graduation a year later. But, So my parents had to kind of grow to love him later. But by the time I graduated from high school, we were planning our wedding for the following February. I wanted nothing more than the perfect family that I had set up in my head. What happened to my family was not going to happen to the family that I had in mind. And I know that that's where part of the fall happened later in my life. When things started to crumble. For the most part, the early years of our marriage were really good. We had a boy and a girl. We were dirt poor, but we would fix up the oldest camper, the ugliest camper in the world, and we would hook that thing up behind this big old car that we had, and we were doing life with our kids, and we were doing good. But there was some background noise. I can't really say what it was in my head, but I know now looking back, I don't think we were serving God like we should have. We both grew up in the Christian home, but things were good. So you just go along with it.
Yeah.
You're going to church. You're checking all the boxes. I had my oldest at 20, the second one at 22, and I am done having children. We have a boy and a girl, and, check. And we're doing life. But when I was 28, we had just moved into a new house and life was really good. And that is when my younger brother was killed suddenly in a car accident with his best friend, and alcohol was involved. And that is something that nothing in life prepares you for any trauma like that. From one second to the next, life is forever changed. And I had a really hard time coming back from that. I didn't understand why it seemed like everybody else was able to move on in some way, and I stayed stuck, and I wasn't sad. I was angry. And I think that, cliche-wise, it would have been the perfect time to pick up drinking. And while I didn't start drinking addictively, I know there was a few times that when I drank, I got drunk. But the good Lord surprised us with a third baby. And yes, I know how it works, but believe me, she was a surprise. The total best surprise of our lives. But I believe that definitely delayed alcoholism for me and put it off because by the time she was 7 or 8, things were really setting in. And everything that I had built up in my mind was not going as planned. Teenagers start talking back to you. We're building a business. Money's tight. We're fighting about money. I mean, and I just remember kind of having that moment of, I'm out. And one day just drinking early in the day, making a split-second decision to do so. And the rest of the day, the rest of the evening kind of went better.
Yeah.
And your brain goes, that worked.
Yep.
And then I did it again. And I remember thinking, you can't do this forever. And I thought, but for now it's working.
Yep.
And what's working? Oh, it's easier. And it's easier meaning life. And pretty soon I just did it for everything. And it would be years of drinking before any social event, not because I was nervous about it, but because I simply didn't know how to do life without alcohol at some point.
Yep.
And, those of you that have been through it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I didn't have social anxiety. I was a super social person. I believe that if something was going to be fun, alcohol could make it funner.
Absolutely.
If something was going to be boring, let's amp it up. And if something was going to be hard, alcohol would help get through it. All the things. And of course, there came to a point where it was taking over my life. I was, getting confronted with it by my husband and some close friends. And when that happened, I just simply wrote off those friends. I have no use for you. No longer drinking socially because people were calling me out on it. And so now I'm only drinking alone. And at the time, I was working for a pregnancy center, Christian nonprofit pregnancy center, and I had some really good people around me. And there was one person there that did know what was going on, a really close friend of mine. And there was a time where I wasn't there for quite a while, and I'd kind of taken a leave. And I had worked there both as staff and a volunteer. So I kind of don't remember I think I was on a volunteer basis. And my husband was out of town, and I got a phone call. I'd been home for a couple days, not drinking, because I promised him I wouldn't drink while he was gone. And for some reason, I was listening that time. I didn't always do that. And they asked me to come in and answer phones because they were so shorthanded. And so I did. And I took some messages up to the executive director during the day, and he was a pastor. And I handed him the messages and said hi. And he said, "Hey, where have you been? You haven't been around here." And I just lost it and just kind of burst into tears, which I didn't do. I had a guard. I had a guard. I was always the one that could, kill him with sarcasm and jokes and deflect and everything else. And I started word vomit like you can't believe about my situation. I can't stop drinking. And I kind of quickly really realized what was going, you got to rein this in. He can't know.
You can't be this vulnerable.
No, what's going on here? So I turned it into, I've been sober, not 5 days, 5 months, and, started changing my story as I was telling it. And, just that I'm doing better. I'm going to meetings, I've been to one, this kind of thing. And, lying to a pastor. So now I'm probably in even more trouble with God. But, he just kind of looked at me when I was done, and I'm thinking, just get it over with. You're going to throw some scripture at me or probably pray on me or tell me who to talk to. And instead, I'll never forget it. He kind of leaned back in his chair and he said, "You need to do the ride for life." And I was like, "What?" And I go, "No." And he goes, "No, we need more women." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not one of them." And I said, "Thanks." And, I just got out of there. So the ride for life was this fundraising. He was a big biker. I was not. I had a Kmart 10-speed somewhere with cobwebs on it in the garage, probably still hooked up to the baby burly bike thing from when my now 12-year-old daughter when she was little. And I'm like in the throes of alcoholism. I am not in good shape here. I am puffy, overweight, not athletic in any way. Never really have been in the first place. So it was just the most bizarre thing anybody could have said to me. So, but this bike trip, the previous year, him and a bunch of guys had gone like all out and just gotten on bikes and rode to Baltimore where the convention was that for the organization. And I thought it was the stupidest thing anybody could ever do. I really did. I thought, why would they do that? And this year he was organizing it to where the conference was in Grapevine, Texas. Again, I thought it was really stupid. And I would go home and for, I don't know, like the next 10 nights, I would get woken up and I'm supposed to be having really good sleep because I'm not drinking, which no fair. I'm getting woken up every night. And I'm like, I'd wake up and I'd be like, what? And I'd be thinking about that bike trip. And I know it was God because I would be like, why am I thinking about that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And about a week later, Craig came home and he didn't ask me right away like he usually would. Like, did you drink while I was gone? And I didn't say anything either. But a couple of nights later, we went out for dinner so we could talk. And he said, did you drink while I was gone? And I said, no. And he said, I believe you. And I said, well, here's what happened. And I figured this is the part where he's going to give me an out because I'm that one with always big new ideas. And he's usually the one going, okay, hold on.
Yep.
And so I'm telling him about this and he like interrupts me and he goes, you got to do it. And I'm like, what? No way. And he said, we were praying for something for you that would rescue physically, emotionally, spiritually. He said, physically, hon, I can't think of anything more challenging or better. Mm-hmm. And he said, spiritually, you're going to be with all these good Christian people for 2 weeks. And he said, emotionally, think of all the time away and just to think and, get close to God. And I was like, I don't have a chance. And long story short, the next day, we're at this bike shop buying this bike with, I don't even know how to shift. I mean, seriously, it was so complicated and it was ugly as far as I was concerned. And then there's the uniform. I've always said there's 2 sports, never, ever, ever having seen the uniforms. One of them is swimming. No. And the second one is biking. Have you seen the shorts? No. Here I am stuffed into these shorts, and there's a part in the book where Craig tries to take a picture. And I said, you will never see your children again if you ever take a picture of me in these shorts. And I mean, it was so bad. And about 51 days later, I left on that bike trip and I leave so hungover. And so, I mean, I didn't drink much that summer leading up to it because I was terrified. I trained like someone I did not know, but I was doing this and I was terrified of being left behind or dragging everybody else behind. And, to be clear, this was not a professional biking team. It was kind of like the Sandlot of biking, but they were a lot further along in the progress than what I was. And they were really cool people. And, I love them. I love all of them. And, but the first 3 days were rough. And I had given into drinking a couple days before we left. And I was probably still a little bit drunk when we left because I drank a lot. Yeah. Yes.
Which, by the way, can I ask this? Is you mentioned this kind of a couple times of, so Craig was asking you if you drank. Craig was asking, was saying, hey, we've been hoping for something to kind of rest. So what was How much did Craig know and realize regarding your drinking? Like, how much were you hiding the full extent of it? Like, what was breaking through? What was he seeing? And kind of what was he saying? We'll be right back after this.
He didn't know that I had drank right before we left. I would say, as we've talked about it over the years, 75% of the time, like that last 2 years, he would know when he walked. He said he could tell when he walked in the door by my eyes.
It's funny. It's exactly what my wife says.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it's the eyes.
Especially towards the end, she, what I call my severe slide period. She's like, I knew, but it sounds like, and perhaps this is the same, my wife was like, I just needed you needed to come to the end of yourself. Like, it had to be you. And I know in the book,
he kind of said, he quit asking.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounded like there was some similarity there. And I think for people listening, there's many ways to skin a cat, but I think one of the most regular questions I get is about, what did your wife do? Or what do I do for the person? And it's hard. And I'm not going to say there's a perfect answer. Our friend Caroline Beidler is writing a book on this. But I can tell you in my experience, and it sounds like, and I know from reading the book that in Sherry's and Craig's experience, that it was, you just had to let it play out. Now, that doesn't mean you didn't put boundaries in. I mean, Craig gave you an ultimatum later, after the infamous Christmas incident of 2009. But man, at some point you just have to turn it over. And it's like, we had to come to the end of ourselves, which, as you're about to get to, you did.
Yeah. Well, Craig would say to me, I could handle the drinking. I could almost handle the drinking more than I can handle the line.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And I know your wife said the same thing, didn't she?
Yep.
And he said, I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to be lied to.
Yep.
So it was easier for him to just be like, a lot of times it was just me and him, at home. Our youngest was the only one left at home, and, she would be gone at a school thing or something. I guarded her a lot more than I did Craig. And there was a lot of times I know that he was just like, screw it. I'm walking away. And you're going to hurt you, you hurt you. I don't care anymore. And I think he was setting up some self-protection in that, and which is why I know I talk about in the book, like how relieved they must have been that I was gone for 2 weeks and someone else's problem, but it really did feel that way, that they must be relieved. I'm off, especially him, like nobody has to, worry about it. And for me, being on that bike trip for 2 weeks, after 3 days, I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
Everybody else is kind of like starting to get beat up, but I'm like, I'm not hungover anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm getting more energy, and I'm finding out that I can be me, whoever that was, with these people. And there was no temptation to drink at all. There was an opportunity. It was off my mind. It was totally removed. And I hadn't experienced that in years. And I was so convicted I was never going to drink again. And I would just be like, thank you, God. And, the hills that were hard, I would literally think about because there were some really hard hills, believe me. Holy cow. I'd be like, really? Really, God? I remember saying that out loud, really, God? And then thinking, did I just yell that, And, but I literally thought about like the horse and the carrot, like dangling the carrot. And I would think about, like sobriety. Like I'm chasing sobriety here. And I don't know what that looked like in my mind, but I was just like crushing it. And I had no intention of coming home and within minutes driving to the liquor store when I was alone, but I did.
Within minutes.
Within minutes.
And I think that is so important. Like, bring us to that. Bring us to what happened. So you get back from the trip And what happens in your mind that leads you there?
You know, a lot of it was, I think, a letdown. It's done. I remember we saw my son somewhere on the way home at work. We stopped and he was so proud of me. And, then Craig just assumed like, hey, you're going to want unpacked. I know you're probably whipped. And he left. And then I thought, well, that was a really cool experience and it's done now. And I am back in the same situation. Nothing's changed. Looking back, what if I'd had a plan? What if while I was on that bike trip, I said to the one person that knew about all this, and she was my roommate, one of my best friends yet today, my friend Carolyn, I said to her, I'm scared to be alone when I get home. I'm scared about what this looks like, but I haven't drank for 2 weeks and I don't want to. My biggest thing that I always say to other women is need to tell someone. Yep. What if I would have just said that to Craig? Don't leave me. I don't want to drink. And from then on, I convinced myself for a long time that I probably could never quit drinking after that because my impulse was stronger than me.
Yeah.
I was like, if I can't quit drinking after that, it's lost.
Which is interesting because then it kind of starts this cycle, right? You go on this trip two more times. And
3 more.
3 more times. And each time it's kind of like, okay, this is it, right? And yet you're still just kind of white knuckling it. And bring us then to, I feel like kind of each time it seems to in a way get worse and worse. And so bring us to that Christmas of 2009 that you talk about in the book, because I think it is such
Christmas 2009 actually happened before the first bike ride.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yes,
I'm getting that.
It did. And that is where so much of the deception happened, because I told my whole family, I'm quitting. Because Christmas 2009, I drank too much at our family Christmas party. And the one at my parents' house, my dad's house with my sister, and where I'm an aunt, I'm a sister, mother, daughter. It was terrible. And it's one of the most painful things to think about. We don't laugh. There's a lot of things we laugh about, but that one we don't. Yeah. And, okay, maybe me and Stephanie do because I took her shoes, but that's a family joke. Yeah, we can laugh about that one a little bit, but anyway, actually it was my sister's shoes, but anyway, going back to that. So they didn't know how bad it was. And that's when I kind of fessed up. Craig said, no, it's bad. Your mom's got a drinking problem. And I had to go around to each of them and say, I have a drinking problem and I'm going to quit and we're going to put this behind us. But in my head, this voice is screaming, I don't know what to do. I can't quit. They're all saying, and I thought, fine. I'm just going to let this die down so they all quit making me the focus. But at the end of the day, I need to become better at hiding it.
Yeah.
That's all I knew.
Yeah.
I just need to get better at this. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did. So that first bike trip was in 2010. By then, all I'm doing is hiding my drinking.
Yeah.
And that's what I would do for the next 3 years till November of 2013.
And so what was different then? What happened November 2013 to really kind of, because I just think, man, it's one of the reasons I resonated so well with the book. I mean, there's these scenes where you're just like, you're drinking in the closet. And for me, that's the garage, right? And I mean, I remember at one point I was like, oh, I'm just doing non-alcoholic beers. I would buy non-alcoholic beer. And some of this I kind of forgotten about. I would pour out the non-alcoholic beer. I'd buy regular beer and pour it into the non-alcoholic containers. And then that way, when it looked like I was drinking NA beer, I was drinking regular beer.
And then you get a beer in your breath and nobody would know.
Right. It's just Texas Select, And
I'm like,
the deception just runs deep. So,
and the alcoholic in me right now is thinking, genius, John. But we didn't have, I didn't have non-alcoholic beer because that wasn't a thing 10 years ago. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dang it, that was good.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Right.
no.
So,
So-
because you have these cycles and it's like, I'm done. And so many
Yeah.
times I said, I'm done. And then I'm done lasted till 5:00 that night.
Yeah.
And for people who aren't addicts, they don't understand that. But your resolve is so strong at 10 in the morning. And then by 5:00, it's just gone.
I used to think to myself, lock me up. Just lock me up so I can get through that. And I don't know how, except for the fact that, I mean, it was God, totally God. But I had 6 months once and I had 9 months once. But through each of those periods, in my head, I knew I wasn't done drinking.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was going to drink again. I just didn't know when. And I was like, let's just do this one more day. And it was kind of like, I can't be done because I didn't say I was done. I'm going to drink one more time. And each time I did go back, then it would be another year. And it wasn't, one drink or a couple for a couple days before I got, sober again. So, but that last time I planned to drink all weekend. I was going to have the house to myself. It's hunting season, and my husband no longer tried to protect his schedule around my drinking. He's like, I'm leaving for the weekend. It's hunting season. And he used to worry. And now he's like, you do you. And he might have thought, she's probably going to drink. He didn't say, promise me you won't drink. We weren't at a good place at all. Our marriage was, I would say, about as close to over as far as a relationship as what it was going to get. And
did you think it was? Like, or in the delusion,
in my head, I was like, he's not going to leave. I mean, honestly, in almost like a bitchy way, like, he's not going to leave. But he was really close. I didn't realize how close until later, but we had always agreed. Divorce was so hard on me that I said, we had an agreement. You cheat on me, you're out. Doesn't matter who. Like, that's it. Don't expect me to get over that. And he felt the same way. That's the only reason we would ever consider divorce. And so to me, I thought, well, as long as, he's not going to divorce me. Excuse me. And I thought I could just, he's not going anywhere. So in my mind, too, that meant nobody's going to know because he's still here. And so I was going to be alone all weekend and set up for the perfect weekend of drinking. And I drank on Friday night.
Which, by the way, I remember those times, right? Like, wife would go out of town or, take the kids to her parents' place for fun or something. And I'd be like, oh, yes.
Yeah. And why was that fun?
I know. And again, like, I wasn't a party drinker. I wasn't a go out. It was like, so I'm like, I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not going to go drive drunk. I'm just going to sit at home for 3 days and drink. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to enjoy it. It's fine.
Yeah. And why? And now I think about all the things I love to do. The weekend is never long enough for me to get in all the things I love to do, but just to sit around and be wasted.
Yeah.
It just boggles my mind. But anyway, so that's what I did, but things were not going well. I couldn't seem to get drunk or pass out like I usually did. I felt sick. I was passing out, waking up, trying to drink more. And by Saturday morning, I knew something was wrong. And I talk about it a lot. I'm pretty carefully in the book. And I panicked and I called a girlfriend. And it was someone I had not been very nice to for a long time. She came right over. And I was scared to death. I know now I had alcohol poisoning. And I was trying to drink and throwing up. And here, still trying to drink. Still trying to get this alcohol in me. She stayed with me all day till nighttime, till it was about close to my daughter coming home. And I promised her I wouldn't drink. She left, and I was terrified about detoxing. I knew how dangerous that was. I went and got some more vodka to drink slowly if I needed it, which I did over the next couple days. And she had made me promise to tell Craig what had happened, or she was going to. And so a couple days later, I told Craig. I tried to write him a letter, and I mean, it was it's kind of a long soap opera of how I tried to tell him, and he was so upset. It was so different than any other time. And he realized, he's like, he could have died. And like, this is what we've come to. And I was terrified he was going to make me go to rehab. There wasn't one rehab I could think of that I could go to or I would go to. And then everybody would know, that whole thing. The kids would know I'd been lying for 3 years. And,
because they thought you were sober for the previous 3 years.
Yes. And, that all came out later. You announce your sober date and they look at you like, wait, what?
Wait a second.
Yeah.
The math ain't mathin'.
And all those times that they were like, was mom drinking? No, they were like, great. You've been lying to us too, Yeah. So it was so much hurt around that. But after some thought, he said to me, you have 2 options. You can, if you ever drink again, you agree to go to rehab. And if you don't agree to go to rehab, I'm leaving you. And I said, okay. And this was at the end of a day that I had spent at home trying to figure out how to talk to him. And I talked to God all day. And I found myself at some point on my knees on my living room floor, crying my eyes out. And I said, I surrender this, God. I don't want this. And I had said that before. But this time it felt different. And I don't know why in the moment it did, except for the fact that I added a line that I'd never said before. And I said, I will do whatever you want me to. And before that, I said, I surrender. And here's what it looks like. Nobody will know, or I'll just drink beer, or just let me go back to being a social drinker, not in the moments. I wasn't that catty, but, I wasn't sincere about my surrender.
Yeah.
But I said, God, I don't take this from me. And I went over, I got up, and it was almost like being in someone took my hand and led me into the kitchen. And I poured that vodka down the sink. And I cannot tell you, you think of the most putrid smell that you could, like dead animal or something. I'll never forget how bad that smelled. And vodka just has a smell to it, But it was awful. And I was gone, and it was done. And usually when you pour away your alcohol, you have that moment of going, oh, crap, why did I do that?
Yeah, can I lick that back up?
Yeah, or I can always get more.
Yeah.
I knew then, right then and there, that alcohol would never, ever be an option for me again. And I didn't understand it. I was scared to death because I didn't know how I was. I mean, honestly, I just kind of sat in the chair the rest of the day just going, God, you're going to have to show me. I don't even know how to tell Craig this because he's going to be like, yeah, right, heard this before.
Yeah.
Which was kind of where he was when I told him this. And I told him the whole story about what had happened over the weekend. And then I said, but today I had this experience, this God experience. And I saw his face. It was kind of like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he walked away from me. And eventually, I went in the kitchen, and he was kind of just had his head on the counter. And he looked at me, and he had tears in his eyes. And that's such, I can't do this anymore. And here's your options. So those options weren't given to me as the reason I quit drinking. It was just the end of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, thank goodness, you'll never, ever have to present that ultimatum to me because I'm done. And he still looked at me, like, yeah, okay. And I said, you should buy a breathalyzer. I said, because I don't ever want you to question it. And it was years later before I would say to him, did you ever buy a breathalyzer? And he said, no, because I said, you should buy it, but you'll never have to use it. And he never did, but yeah, he never bought one. But
by the way, I bought a breathalyzer at one point, but I used to keep it to check if I was good enough to go somewhere. Seriously, I had this mini breathalyzer, and I think it was, it was from, China, so it was probably wasn't even accurate, Ossifer, it said I'm fine. But
I'm good.
What you said there, I think, is important, because if you're listening to this and you have to have that conversation, or maybe you've had that conversation with your spouse, I just want to be clear that, if or when they react the way that Craig reacted, which is the way that my wife reacted as well, they've earned that. They've earned that right to react that way. And what I mean is that, listen, we've broken trust so many times that the approach that Craig took, the approach that Brett, my wife, took was, you're going to have to prove it. I want to believe you, but until you show me, I have nothing to go on, right? And I think sometimes there are people who hear that, and I know people who've said, well, I can't believe you, man, I'm pouring out my soul to you right now, and that's the reaction I get, and then they go drink,
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, no, there are consequences for our actions. And one of the consequences is that we have to build up trust. I'm still building up trust. I'm almost 3 years into this, and I'm still building up trust, Sherry.
Yes.
It's
I believe
just
ya.
the reality. We'll be right back after this.
I say that to women a lot when they're leaving the program in Sailor House. You can tell people all you want. You can say it. You can talk up a storm about how you've changed. But that doesn't matter. They need to see the change and observe it and see it be continual. Yes, we're going to screw up, but our screw up isn't going to be from drinking. Our screw up is just going to be because we're human. We're going to have days where we're angry, or we're going to have days where we're say or do the wrong thing. I said, but that's called sin, or that's called temperament. It's not all because, and I remember saying this to Craig once, not everything is because I want to drink. Sometimes I'm just having a bad day, or sometimes you just make me mad, which to this day still makes me mad sometimes, or we still set each other off, Everybody that knows Craig is like, he doesn't set her off, she sets him off, but he's a very quiet, he's a very even keel guy. But
the exact thing with my wife, we're married to the same person.
Yes, I'm like, ugh.
Which makes sense, because if you and I are the same person just a few years apart, then they are too.
Yes, there's always, it's a balance. But, I said, we have to show other people who Jesus is. That's our job here. Simple.
Yeah.
And we're not showing people who Jesus is when we're drunk. So just live the life that Jesus is asking you to live. Do your best. And that's what people are going to see, and that's what they're going to honor, and that's what they're going to start to trust. But don't try and fake it, because people will see right through it.
So, your story here, the beginning of really the change happens when you fully surrender to Jesus. And so you and I have talked a lot about this. We are, in a camp that I would say is gospel-centered recovery. And so explain, when you talk to women who have maybe been where you are, or maybe have tried traditional or secular programs, what does it look like? And in your experience, why is it, in a sense, more effective to take a gospel-centered approach versus a secular approach?
Well, where to start with that one?
Just a quick question with 10 minutes left.
Yeah, sure. I guess the answer to that, to me, is really simple, because I believe that there's a lot of secular tools that are really good ones here for us, and they're valuable.
Yeah.
The mistake that many of us make when we're trying to sober up, or whatever the substance is, or whatever the addiction is, to a habit or whatever, is we start with searching for every other tool other than relying on God. And that's what I did. I'm like, I'll do another bike ride. I'll train more. I'll go to a meeting. What's so-and-so on Instagram saying to do? I'll do another, I'll give this up. I was famous for doing setting up a health journey. And along with that, then alcohol is going to go away. Well, that never worked. But
you even, by the way, Sherry, and I think, we don't have time to fully get into this, but you were even on medication. You were on antabuse, right? Which made you allergic, if you will, to alcohol. Mm-hmm. And you still found ways around it. Like you still cheated the system. Like you were literally taking medication that if you drank, it would make you sick, and you still were drinking and still hiding it and all the stuff.
Yep. I figured out how to not drink Monday through Thursday, and when to stop taking it so I could drink by Friday if I was going to be alone on the weekend. Yep. It was just, it just consumes you.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, and this is my why for what I do today. Start with Jesus. Start with faith. Start with the sweet surrender of giving it to Him and saying, God, help me. Start there. And then make the other things a supplement.
Yes.
Not the main thing.
Yes.
Make Him the main thing. So at Selah House, we teach, a program I wrote about the fruit of the Spirit, and it's not complicated. Let's learn to walk in the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, all the things. That's who Jesus calls us to be.
Yeah.
And in that, yes, we're learning about sobriety, and I know you say it a lot too. Find Jesus, find sobriety.
Yes.
Because that comes naturally. And do we still go to, we still introduce them to AA, Bridge for Life, Celebrate Recovery, because we believe those are all important things, and there's community there, because not everybody, is local and has access to coming to Selah House for that community. We do a lot virtually, but you need to be grounded in the Word and in who Jesus tells you are. And He says you are royalty. And you don't need to live like that. And
can I ask you a quick follow-up on that?
Yes.
What do you say to people who say, well, Sherry, I listened to your story. You were shooting for Jesus. You were a Christian. You were shooting for Jesus, but you weren't getting recovery. What do you say to those people? Like, what is different? You know what I mean? Like, because I've had people ask me that. Well, John, you were a Christian. You were going to church. You were doing discipleship stuff. So what do you mean? Like, it didn't seem to work. What do you say to them?
Well, I was doing everything that, I led children's choir. We did a couples club. We did all the things. I went through all the motions that said good Christian girl.
Yeah.
But I did not have a relationship with the Lord. I went to church sometimes twice on Sunday. I checked all the boxes. But did I know what it was like to sit in the quiet in the morning and set up my day with God? Did I know what it was like to be listening to a worship song on the radio, and be overcome with tears because it just spoke to me? No. I discovered what it was like to have a true relationship with Him.
Yeah.
And that's where the difference was.
Yes.
And that's what made all the difference in the world. Yeah. You can do all the things, check every single box. You can go to church 10 times a week. I don't care. Yep. But if you don't have that relationship with Him, It's a lost cause.
That's what I say in my book, right? Is I had lacked, I had what had gone by the wayside was a experiential relationship with Jesus, not experientialism, not just conjuring up emotions and whatnot. I'm saying an experiential, abiding relationship with Jesus where you're fully surrendered to him. That's the difference. I think that's the difference. You
Amen.
know, what you outlined to us in your story is you finally got inside whatever you want, whatever you tell me to do, right? That, you know, and so sometimes I clarify and I say it's, if you aim for Jesus and follow him in the way that he tells us to, right? Which is fully surrendered. Seek first the kingdom of God and all these things will be added unto you, right? And all these things, by the way, that he's talking about there in Matthew is like food and clothes, right? It's not like, you know, other stuff that you want. It's like the basics and the necessities, right? So literally following him in the way that he has called us and outlines in the scriptures to follow him. Yes. And so maybe you're going to church. Maybe I was leading small group, Sherry, and I would get buzzed before small group, and I'd convince myself, well, that makes me a better small group leader. You know, I can be better.
Oh, amen. I'm so glad you said that because I was, that happened once.
Yeah, you know. So it's being fully surrendered and living. You know, my pastor says it like living in God's world, God's way. Right now, will we do that perfectly? Like, no, it's always going to be a struggle. But you and I know that there was a point of complete surrender where the tables, it finally tilted and it finally shifted in our spirit. The moment of complete surrender, what it looks like for me, it look different than Sherry, right? But I think our point is you got to get to that point, and that's what makes the difference, right?
Oh, yeah. And that it's accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that as a Christian, we fall harder because I always think that, you know, I had more shame, like shouldn't we have known better? Or someone's going to say to me, where was your God then that whole time? But on the other side of it, we have access to this beautiful life that he's calling us to.
Yeah.
And on the other side of it, there's work to be done. Yeah. My life verse is Ephesians 3:20. He has more plan than you will ever ask or imagine. And I keep thinking, oh, there it is. There's that, there's more than I ever asked or imagined, but it keeps happening.
Yeah.
It keeps happening. It's so much better. So much better.
Sherry, thank you so much for joining today. You've become a good friend. I'm going to be joining you at your conference this fall in September.
Yes.
I'm excited to be, I don't know, am I speaking, I think, or
I
am
think,
I just showing
I
up?
mean,
yeah, okay.
We're doing all the things, John. So you might be the most prominent male figure there at this point.
I know. They joke that I'm going to be with my wife. My wife jokes that I have like middle-aged women that I hang out with, and I'm like, yeah, it's true. And part of that is like why I feel called, right? Is like there are some great powerhouse women like you and Christy and all these people in this space, and yet men have been quiet, and so I'm excited to carry that torch into a room full of women.
And it is a club that 4 years ago for you, maybe 13 years ago for me, I would have been like, I don't want that club.
Yeah,
no
right?
Thanks. And now I'm just like, I'm so excited to be a part of it and honored to be a part of it with you.
Because these are the people, I can talk, our friend Christy, it's like, I'd like FaceTimed her yesterday. I was like, can you believe this?
I know.
Because we can be real with each other. It's just great.
It's so good.
If people want to get the book, if they want to find out more about Selah House, where can they go, Sherry?
So there's shesurrenders.com, which is the ministry I started a couple years into my sobriety, still going. And that's on Instagram, Facebook, selahhouserecovery.org is where all things Selah House are, including a great video about who we are.
Yeah.
Sober Cycle, pedaling through recovery one day at a time, every place you get books. And you'll probably include all those links. So,
I will.
Yeah, all the things.
And if you are looking, if you're a woman that's looking for a place to go, I can, no matter where you are, like Selah House is not just for the people in that, kind of Grand Rapids, Holland area, right? Like
Right.
I think a lot of times it's really good to get out of your bubble, to get away. And, maybe you don't want to go in the dead of winter, but I can tell you that summertime on Lake Michigan is the most one of the most magical things that you can experience. So if you're looking for a place to go, to get away and to reset and to actually experience Jesus, shoot for Jesus and get sobriety thrown in, I recommend Sail House. Sherry, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you, John. Same.
There are plenty of things I love about Sherry, but the fact that how real she is, right? She's real, she's raw, she's relatable, right? I mean, that's what this podcast is all about. And maybe she also sounds a little bit like my sister or my mom, with that Midwest accent. And so I just really love talking with her. And I'm grateful for her vulnerability. And you get more of that even in Sober Cycle, the book. But I think that came through today. And so if there is just one thing that resonated with you in this podcast, please share it. You can like, subscribe, and do all that stuff, but please share it. Share it with one person. Share it on your social media or wherever. If there is just 20 seconds of something that resonated, because that gets the word out. Not about the podcast. I don't care about the downloads. I don't care about the podcast growing. I care about the message of hope that is baked into every single episode and every single story. Thanks as always to our partner, Life Audio, lifeaudio.com, to listen to some other great podcasts. Love you all. We'll see you here next week.